brought Pauper text to the party. Pauper. I brought Pauper text to the party.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 54 of the PDH Pod, the one and only Magic the Gathering podcast dedicated to the total exploration of the Pauper Commander format. I am your host, Brad Drac V, and let's see what my co-hosts from the East Coast are up to. First, Dave the Alcadron Vader. How's it going?
It's going really well. Today was my last day of school. And
Ooh.
on this day of the kids were finished on Friday. They had their final exam on Friday. And so today, the following Wednesday, I went into school, had a 90-minute breakfast with my department where I was given donuts and Starbucks.
Hell yeah.
Then there was a, I'll say 45-minute staff meeting, all staff meeting, where the principal talked about how awesome we all are and how awesome we're going to be next year. And then we drove over to the yacht club. I didn't even know my city had a yacht club, but we drove over to the yacht club and they fed us all lunch. And there was a cash bar. I didn't drink anything, but it was just all of my coworkers just having a big party, and then I left. That was my last day of work. That's
how you should wrap up work for the year, I think.
Right. And now I get a couple months off.
I was cool. I was cool with donuts and coffee, and then you just kept raising the stakes.
Just kept going. My day. So that's how I'm doing. I'm doing fantastic, and I'm about to be doing even better.
Amazing. Well, let's check in on our resident PDH PhD. Liam, did you get on a yacht and eat some food?
I did not get on a yacht and eat some food today, unfortunately. No.
Rookie mistake.
Yeah,
Rookie mistake.
I know. I should have woken up and driven straight to the coast. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. My day has not been anywhere near as fascinating. I've just been kind of lounging around.
I don't know if anybody's has.
Sorry, you did.
See, that's generally what's that?
You did what? I missed it.
I've just been lounging around.
Oh, see, that's good too, though.
Yeah, that's very good too. All right, we're going to move on to the main topic, but first, as usual, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you like the show and you like what we're doing here, check us out over on Patreon at patreon.com/thepdhpod. By being a patron, you get access to the pre-show, which is basically like a little bonus episode every week, but just for the patrons. I post the episode on Patreon before it goes out live, usually the night before, along with show notes, so you can follow along with whatever we're talking about. We usually have the cards hyperlinked in there and all that good stuff, deck lists, what have you. Finally, you get access to the PDH Pod Discord, our very own secret little Discord server. You can chat up with the crew, you can talk about decks, you can help build decks from the ground up, and it's just all around good conversation. And then on YouTube and Twitch, we're the PDH Pod as well over on those two platforms. And I stream Paper PDH, Spell Table PDH every Saturday, so check it out there. And then if you want to leave us a review or like or stars or whatever those places let you do, drop one of those in there as well. It'd be super appreciated. Do we have any this week in Magic, Liam?
We do. We have a tiny little this week in Magic.
A little blurb.
Yeah, this week a Twitter account popped up titled @NotAlcadron, and I was just wondering, Dave, if you had news for us.
I don't. I found out that this existed yesterday when Scarecrow messaged me on Discord hey, I have no idea whether or not this is you, but in case you don't already know about it, it's hilarious. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I went to visit it, and I don't know who you are, but I love you with all of my heart. Not Alcadron.
Don't ever reveal yourself.
You're doing the Lord's work, and I
100%.
Godspeed, you beautiful bastard.
Godspeed, not Alcadron.
All right, so you heard it here first. Not Alcadron is officially not Alcadron.
I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
It's a very accurately named account.
Yes, very clever.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Good to know.
But we have well, I guess the opposite would be just the Alcadron. That's what we have on our show, huh?
The Alcadron. Yeah.
This, this means whenever you do make a Twitter account, you have to be like the real Alcadron, or like Alcadron official.
if I
Alcadron official, that's it.
So by saying this out loud, someone is immediately going to make a Twitter account with this handle. But like, if I ever made a Twitter account, the handle would be not Alcadron.
Oh, see, that's just poetry right there.
You gotta really leverage the double negative.
You do. I think you have to.
Fair enough.
Oh, good stuff. Y'all ready for the main topic?
Yeah,
I'm ready for a main topic.
Not Alcadron. Do you want to tell the people what we're talking about this evening?
I would be delighted to tell people what we're talking about this evening. We are still talking about Lord of the Rings. By the time this episode goes live, the set will also be going live at approximately the exact same time, which means a bunch of people all around the world are about to start drafting Lord of the Rings constantly, and that is what we are here to talk about. One of the most wise and salient things that I think has been said about PDH and the show in specific is that one of the beautiful things about PDH is that if you find yourself with a draft deck that you really love, some kind of signpost uncommon led you down a path and you made a draft deck that was perfect for you. Like, I think it was Shivan Bhat talking to Derek. They were saying this originally. They were saying, like, you can just transform that into a PDH deck. So that's what we want to talk about. First, we're going to talk about what the draft deck is going to look like. We're going to talk a little bit about the major mechanics that are going on in Lord of the Rings, and if you dive headfirst into that specific mechanic to try and leverage all the synergies surrounding it into a winning draft deck, which cards you might be looking at and what synergies you're going to want to find within the set to make a really good draft deck. And that's going to include discussion of a lot of the commons that you'll have access to and some uncommons that you should be seeing relatively frequently in this draft environment.
Yep. And then we're going to do some stuff after that, too. We're going to take all that information and we're going to zoom way, way out and answer the question, if you take this 40-card signpost uncommon flavored draft deck into a PDH deck by scrapping all your bombs, replacing them with commons throughout Magic history, what would that look like? I submit it'll look a little bit like a 3x3. But first, I think we have to do what Not said and talk a little bit about the draft stuff.
Yeah, I can start.
Liam, you want to start us off here?
So the mechanic that I have this week is The Ring Tempts You, inspired by the signpost uncommon for Is It Bilbo Retired Burglar. The Ring in Limited is all about applying pressure with combat. This deck wants to be low to the ground and aggressive, while being able to pivot in the late game into enough tempo to get you across the finish line. The Ring Tempts You is kind of a little bit all over the place. It's on a little bit of everything, from aggro cards to control cards to creatures. Some of those creatures just ETB, some die, some have other stipulation that needs to be met. But once the ring is fully online, the deck really does just want to be aggressive, so you want to make sure that you have a couple of fantastic creatures. An example of that would be Rohirrim Lancer. It's a 1-mana 1/1 with Menace, and when it dies, it tempts you. So it gets an early for chip damage and still advances the gameplay after it's dead, because it's tempting you once your opponents are like done with it, right? Because it's a 1/1 with Menace. Yeah, it's going to require 2 blockers, but it'll die. Another fantastic creature for this is Relentless Rohirrim, 4-mana 4/3, that when it enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. So it's pretty aggressively costed for its stat line, but it's still really good in terms of that aggro gameplay. In Limited, if you can splash black for some of those Nazgul, do it, because they are busted. Speaking, you don't need 9 of them for them to be good. You need 1. And when your opponent has 2, you're done. They are nuts. Yeah. And if you are playing or splashing for black, this also lets you get the Mirkwood Bats, which work really well for Bilbo's treasures, because when the treasure ETBs or gets used, the bat will trigger. Going forward with this limited archetype, a good amount of cheap removal will also keep you going forward, and keeping opponents on that back foot where we like to have them. Things like the Soothing of Smeagol, which is a bounce spell, or Ranger's Firebrand, which is basically a shock, will get you there where you need to be.
Both of those things tempt.
Yes, yeah. Sorry.
Soothing is a bounce that tempts, and Ranger's Firebrand is a shock that tempts.
Yep.
A lot of tempting going on.
Like in the PDH version, you don't have to go hard in the tempt because Bilbo will just do all of that for you. He tempts on ETB and when he leaves. But like in the limited deck version, you need every single card you can get your hand on that says tempt because like even after you hit
Yeah.
stage 4, someone's gonna murk your ring bearer, and you need another tempt event to choose a new ring bearer.
Yep.
So like you need all of it in
Right.
there all the time. Which is like one of my favorite things about Bilbo in the limited format is that he does both of those things for you. Like when he ETBs, he can make himself the ring bearer and give himself that evasion, which is great. And then if he's your ring bearer, when he dies, he gives you another free tempt so that you can just immediately choose someone else. Like when he eats that removal
Mhm.
spell, like you're still doing the aggressive ring strategy, which is outstanding in limited.
Yeah. Dave, what are you drafting this week?
I am going to be drafting up a deck that uses the scry mechanic that is stapled onto all of the elves in Middle Earth.
Mm-hmm.
The signpost uncommon I'm going to be working with here is Arwen Undomiel, who is a 2-mana 2/2 with a triggered ability. Whenever you scry, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and an activated ability for 6 mana you can scry to, which is an exorbitant rate.
That is a lot of mana.
That is literally highway robbery. It's absurd. This is not something you'll ever do if you have better things to do with your mana. But if you find yourself with 6 empty mana and you're dead drawing, like you can scry to make
Why
sure you
not?
don't dead draw again.
Yeah.
Give yourself a counter somewhere, I guess. But yeah, the elves in the set are all really cool because like all of them do this scrying thing a lot. Like there's a bunch that will a bunch of them have triggered abilities that happen when you scry. Like Arwen. When you scry, she puts a counter somewhere. Like there's a Celeborn card that does when you scry, he gets bigger, and Elrond will give you a bunch of scries when creatures enter the battlefield. Glorfindel will make himself bigger when you scry and make things block or not block him. Legolas untaps when you scry. All of these are uncommons, but they are all
Yep.
really powerful scrying synergy. You have this whole network of scrying synergies that you can utilize to build like an engine here of really powerful effects that just trigger each other over and over again. Um, there are 2 commons that have these scry triggers, Nimrodel Watcher and Chance-Met Elves. Each of them will get bigger when you scry, which is really outstanding.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then there's also just a big pile of elves that scry. There's one that scries on attack. There's one that scries on ET. There's probably a couple that scry on ETB now that I'm thinking about it. And we also have just a big pile of like really good utility spells that scry incidentally, like Hithlean Knots and Shower of Arrows.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Elven Farsight and Lembas will both give you that scry and then replace themselves, so that you're not spending a card just for all these triggers. You're getting all the triggers and another card in your hand. So yeah, there's a lot of synergistic cool stuff you can put together with this scry mechanic in Simic, which is the worst, but it's strong. It does things.
Yeah, they've really leaned into the scry too. I wonder if it's just they wanted to lean that heavily into it, or they understand that scry is inherently not a super powerful mechanic, so they just slapped it on as many cards as they possibly could.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it's that, and I think there's like flavor-wise, the lore is that there's a handful of the elves in Middle Earth have the gift of foresight, which lets them see
Mm-hmm.
into the future and like they have the
True,
vision.
true,
Like
true.
Elrond has these visions of the future, and like Galadriel literally has a big scrying pool that she uses. So I think they just really wanted to like find some way to make that both flavorful and impactful. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the scrying by itself isn't hugely impactful, but like having all these cards that, when you scry, they get big and do something else and do cool stuff. Like I think that that's a great way
Yeah.
to make scrying really relevant in a limited format.
Yeah, I think so. And it was sort of overwhelming at first, especially like looking at the cards as they were released, and like every other card had Scry on it. And then we talked about it in our set review. Like now that I've had a chance to sort of absorb the set as a whole and step back a little bit, I think having Scry on all the elves and such I like it. It was a good move.
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it.
It was just a whole lot at first.
Yeah, and,
a whole lot of scrying everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I will also freely admit that like at first I was really like down on this mechanic. Like when we did our first set review, I was like, yeah, also the elves do scrying, but that's boring. Let's move on. Like I was very dismissive of it, but like now that I've had a chance to process it a little more, I really like it.
Well, it was funny. We did the set review last week, and you were kind of down on it. And then, like, literally, we stopped recording. But as we normally do every week, we hung out and chatted for a couple more minutes. And you're like, I just built an Arwen deck, and I kind of like it.
I did it while on voice chat with you. I just, like, 5 minutes, I just slapped it together. And I was like, is this actually really good? Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know about the Scry because it's kind of funny because I think we've swapped places. Because last week, I remember kind of agreeing that it was just a little boring. It seemed a little simple. But now I'm even more down on it because next to the Nazgul being fairly broken, if your deck just every card scries, it's very difficult to interact with that in Limited. And in the two pre-releases I did, both times there was this woman who opened a very heavy scry pool in both pre-releases, and her deck was scry elves and Entwoods, and it was very, very difficult to interact with anything she was doing because she literally just scryed until she hit Ents, and the Ents alone were difficult to deal with unless you had the right removal or the death touches. But just scrying, you can't interact with that action, and all of the scry payoffs that exist, I don't know if she just happened to open really two like just really gas pools and the scry is weaker than I'm thinking, or if I'm sitting here thinking like, what does this look like as a draft deck? Like how are you supposed to deal with this? And I think the answer is simply you don't. And I kind of went from feeling like, oh, this is very boring to I can't do anything about this in games. And I don't know how I feel about that.
I'm sort of fine with it because like you can't interact with the scrying, like the action of scrying itself, but like you can kill the things that are doing the scrying. You can kill the things that get big when they scry.
You can absolutely kill the things that get big when they scry, but you can't stop an ETB scry 2 or an ETB scry 3.
Yeah, I mean that's fair.
And then
like the spells that scry as part of their effect.
Yeah, but the creatures that enter the battlefield, I mean, granted, they are 3 or 4 mana, but still, like, a Simic deck getting to 4 mana is not a problem. And it's just, like, they get to 3 or 4 mana, and then they just start dropping 3/4s that scry 2 when they enter. And I'm just like, they drop one of those a ton until you get to turn 7, and they start dropping 2 of them, and it's like, what am I supposed to be doing at this point?
Sounds crazy. Sounds good, though. Sounds very synergistic.
It was very good.
Explorable and exploitable.
In both pre-releases, I was on so the first one I was on a Boros aggro plan, and the second one I was on a Mardu aggro plan. And both times, the only game I lost was against her. The fact that I got paired against her in round 2 of both events was irritating. But the only games I lost were to the scrying, because once we hit turn 5, I was done. Like I had no interaction for any of that. My shocks and my bolts don't destroy 3/4s and 5/7s.
That seems like it's working as intended. I feel like the elf deck should.
The elf deck is definitely
be able to.
It's like you have to get the damage in early on the elf deck. But it seems like the removal in the set becomes useless against the deck once that deck is turned on.
Yeah, if you don't draw it early.
I was able to close a couple games against elf decks at my pre-release. I feel like, I just had a Balrog.
That helps.
That
at some point you get someone down to 7 life and you're like, oh, it's weird. Do you not have legendary creatures? That sucks.
Sorry for you.
Dang.
You know, this guy is haste.
See ya.
Peace, I guess.
Peace out.
So like, yeah, I mean, I guess you do need some extra help to close the game sometimes,
Yeah.
but it's fine. I ended one game like I had the guy at 7, and I needed to connect with the rug, and I was using the one ring to just frantically dig through my deck as fast as possible because I knew it was my only out left. And like by the time I drew the Balrog, he had 2 legendary creatures to block with. This is the Durin's Bane, but I had also drawn 2 Lash of the Balrog. So I sacrificed both of my creatures to kill his 2 legendary creatures, and that reduced the cost of the Balrog exactly enough that I could just drop it into
Just
play
smash
and be like,
face.
sorry. It was just this perfect storm of like this guy going from like the absolute unstoppable driver's seat of this game who's about to crush me in a turn to being like, whoops.
What? Wait, I
just
win.
have the exact 3 cards I need to dumpster you right
Whoopsie.
here. Sorry, friend.
Yep, sorry for you.
He was a good sport about it. I love playing against that guy. He's super fun, but it was certainly bad luck for him.
I do want to mention for a moment that I appreciate that even though there is a separate Balrog card in the Commander set from the one that's in the pack set, I appreciate that you indicated which Balrog you were talking about, because there are 2 of them in the draft set.
There's so many Balrogs.
Yeah.
There are 2 of them at the same rarity.
I don't even know what the other one does. I had the
other one is awful.
The
5
hasty...
mana, 7/7 with trample, and whenever a legendary creature an opponent controls dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library.
Oh, that is terrible.
Yeah, sorry.
I had the good one.
Whenever a legendary creature an opponent dies, put the Balrog on the bottom of its owner's library.
That's what I understood.
Could you imagine paying 5 mana for your 7/7 and then your opponent just killing their own creature?
No, I had the 7 mana, 7/5 haste. Can't be blocked except by legendaries. When it dies, it destroys a thing. I did not think of it that way, but sure, it is vaguely Dargo-ish. Yeah. Yes. Anyway,
vaguely Dargo-ish.
I want to hear what Brad's mechanic is. Tell me about your limited mechanic, and then tell us about your limited experience, maybe, if you did any pre-releases this weekend.
I shall. My limited mechanic is Smash Face Tribal. Like, I'm not doing a whole bunch of synergistic stuff. There's not, is it spell slinging around, and there's not a bunch of scries and elves doing magical things. I'm literally just building gigantic armies of orcs and some tokens, and I'm just trying to cross the red zone and smash people in the face. My signpost uncommon is the Mouth of Sauron, 3 colorless, and Dimir for a 3/4. When it ETBs, you amass Orcs X, where X is the number of instants and sorcery cards in that player's graveyard. And that's it. The only other text on the card is reminder text of how to amass. So in a draft deck like this, you can, being Dimir, you can stretch it into Grixis, which actually gives you access to a lot more of the amass cards. I think about 25 of them total, and they do a lot of really cool things. Foray does damage. Orc Bowmasters, which apparently is already breaking formats, even though it's not really out in paper yet. I don't understand that, but people are already calling for the banhammer on Bowmaster, and I guess that's why it's $45 already. But that's super good.
I have one of those. I need to unload that now.
You need to unload it ASAP. The regular printing is like 30 something, and the showcase is $45.
Yeah,
it's wild.
Damn.
So the Orcish Bowmasters, I'm very torn on how to feel about it. I absolutely do not feel that it needs banned.
Correct.
Because at the end of the day, it is just another card draw pinger, which we have like 5 of in the format already.
Sure.
Yes, it amasses, which makes 1 token, and some people are like, well, that's just sacrifice fodder. You can sacrifice those tokens in between triggers. It's like, okay, sure, but let's calm down.
Yeah.
Is the problem in the format that is EDH really the Bowmasters, or is it the fascination of drawing 60,000 cards a turn? Let's rein it in.
They want to draw all the cards and have no repercussions.
Yeah, like what really is the problem here? Because the thing, I think that the biggest strike against the Bowmasters is that it can mow down other creatures.
Yes.
I definitely think it should have just been reined in towards the player who drew the card. You draw an extra card, you take an extra point of damage.
Yeah, doing a damage to any target. Like Liam can draw a card and I can mow down Alk's board. Like that's a little awkward, but They're orcs.
I
They're
think
crazy.
that the fact that it has flash is fine. I don't think it's really that comparable to Hull Breacher, or Hullbreaker, whatever it was that stopped the card draw and made treasures for you instead. I think that was broken. Orcish Bowmasters,
That's absolutely broken.
You get to keep the extra card you draw. You just take an extra point of damage.
Yes.
And I think it's going to be a card that playgroups are going to have to socially regulate. Like, I know it says any target, but like, doesn't really. It just says my face, right?
Yeah.
like that's a card you're going to have to socially regulate. And I absolutely don't think it's going to need banned. But I think the fact that it's just a stronger variant of cards we already have, I don't know that $30 is the right place for it to settle, especially because the set officially releases in 2 days.
Yeah, correct.
But I definitely think it's going to be a $15 to $20 card pretty solidly.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, 30 and $45 is a little steep, but it's not it'll never be bulk, I don't think.
I think the borderless could remain around 45, but the regular frame is going to have to drop.
Yeah. So anyway, that card is absolutely wild. Grishnak steals things. Orcish Medicine is very good protection. And then there's some... and then, what is this one here? We got Treason of Isengard. You could put one target instant or sorcery from your graveyard on top of your library and amass 2. And that's all for 3 mana, so that's super good. And then some of the best value you can get out of Orc armies in Limited is their expendability. And we're all fans of sacking stuff here. We're all Aristocrats fans. We like makeshift munitions and deadly disputes. So you're going to want to run a lot of sacrifice stuff like Lash of the Balrog, like you guys mentioned earlier. Nasty End, which I'm a huge fan of, which makes Grishnak's thieving ability even stronger. The sacrifice stuff will go really well with Mirkwood Bats. I mean, that's just like one of the strongest, funniest cards they've printed at Common in a long time. And if you can swindle any away from whoever's drafting the food, that's going to be a very popular archetype is the food. So if you can get some of those, that's great. If you've got bats and orcs, throw in the Mordor Trebuchet and things are off to the races. Like that's extremely powerful combination of cards right there especially to do in Limited where, most decks are going to have access to removal, but very little removal at that. So that just seems like a way to kind of grindy closeout games, and I'm absolutely here for it.
My sealed pool had 3 bats.
Jesus.
1 trebuchet. yeah, 3 bats, 1 trebuchet, like 10 amass cards, and 3 Lash of the Balrogs.
So it just came out of the box as a deck. Like you're just like, oh look, here we go.
Kinda, yeah. Like I also had the mono blue Gandalf that lets you play sorceries with flash. So I was attacking with my big orc army, creating a boulder with the trebuchet, triggering Mirkwood Bats with the 1 damage off of the creation of the boulder token. Instant speed sacrificing a boulder token to Lash of the Balrog to kill something, which you normally can't do because it sacks itself at end of combat.
Right.
Like using Gandalf's flash ability to sack this thing like in combat after damage to get another trigger and get the removal spell and get the Mirkwood Bats. Like it was out of control.
That is nuts to do with a limited deck. Like that's crazy.
I had a Nazgul in my pool. I didn't play it.
You didn't need to, apparently.
Maybe I should have, but I had so much like just powerhouse, amass cards that I was just living the dream.
To answer your second question, I did not get any drafting done on pre-release weekend.
No worries.
I can't remember what came up. I stream on Saturday, so that's always out. And then I was doing something Friday that I've already forgot what I was doing. So I ran up to the shop before I came home from work and spent some money there just to help out the shop. I always patronize them on, opening day or new card day, if you will. But it's been a while since I've been to a pre-release. I need to make it back to one, I think.
I love pre-releases.
Yeah. They're fun. I'm really bad at them. Like, I'm not great at building a sealed deck. I'm terrible at drafting, but I love the atmosphere of pre-release weekend. Like, every single person in that building is excited for all the same reasons. Like, it's just a good time. Yep.
It's a real good vibe.
Yeah, very good vibe. And that pretty much wraps up our draft stuff, our signpost uncommons. What do we got next, Liam?
Next up, we are pivoting. What would these limited decks look like as PDH decks? So we're scrapping all of the uncommons and the rares that we've previously talked about. We are going from 60 cards to 100, and 40 cards to 100. It's limited. And we are moving the signpost cards from in the deck to the command zone. So we're opening things up to not just what's in this set, but to all of the commons from all of Magic's history. And what do those decks look like? Dave, you want to walk us through Octillas?
Yeah. So we don't want this to be like a standard issue traditional 3x3,
Sure.
but we do want it to be we just think that the pillars are really good tools for organizing our thoughts on what PDH decks look like. So we are going to go through 4 pillars here. Pillar number 1 is going to be different for all of us. It's just going to be doing the thing. How are we going to get more tempts in a situation where we now have a 100-card deck and only a few of those cards have tempt on it? How are we going to get more amass? Like, what clever tricks are we going to do to this Mouth of Sauron card to get more amass triggers out of him? How are we going to get more scrying? This is boring. You just play cards that say scrying. Okay, my first pillar's done. Anyway, pillar 2. How are we each going to leverage this thing into an advantage? Like, scrying a lot more isn't going to win me a game. I need to transform that into some sort of game-winning advantage, some sort of pressure that's going to move me towards some kind of victory or some kind of conclusion. Same thing with temps, same thing with amass. Like, what are we going to do once we have gotten all of this stuff? How are we going to leverage that into advantage, into a game win? Pillars 3 and 4 should be very familiar. Pillar 3, as always, how to not die. Pillar 4, as always, how to not run out of gas.
Oh, classic 3 and 4.
The classics.
Yep.
Who's going to start us off with pillar 1?
I'll start us off. What do you think?
Awesome.
You want some Dimir action?
I'm ready. I love hearing about Dimir.
All right. Well,
I love hearing about Dimir much more than I love talking about Simic. So yes, please regale me.
That is completely fair. Something I realized is that my 3 favorite words in all of Magic, besides obviously draw a card, are enters the battlefield. So not only does Mr. Mouth want all the amass cards, I mean, you got to go hard on the amass. That's what he wants to do. He wants all the amass cards, but he also wants to get flickered as much as possible. You're in blue, so you have access to all of those, and you're in black, so you have access to, as Dave has copyrighted, the Grave Flickers. So your regular blue flickers, your black Grave Flickers, a full Archaeomancer suite with the flicker spells to get them back after you cast them the first time, or if they get milled from the Mouth of Sauron. There is 11 total amass cards in the deck, and as you probably guessed, most of them are from Lord of the Rings. There is Callous Dismissal from War of the Spark in here, but for the most part, they're all brand new cards, and they all play into this amass theme. They all want to build that army bigger and taller and taller and taller, and then there are, as far as flickers go, I have about 9 total flickers between black and blue. So those are a little harder to come by. It's going to be a little harder to draw those directly off the top of the deck, but we have plenty of draw spells to dig for them. We have Archaeomancers to get them back, Flood of Recollection to get them back if I've casted them. And then, well, I guess if you count Mouth, there's 12 total amass cards, but in the 99, there's 11 total. And then that's really about it. It's just going to be, it's a commander that cares about entering the battlefield. And that's it. It's very aggressive after that. There's not a lot of, I didn't build, even though I'm in the colors for it, I didn't build any sort of combo in the deck. No transmute cards, nothing like that. Just straight up, here's giant creatures. Oh, you killed it or you bounced it. Okay, fine. I'll just make another one because your kill spell just put an instant or sorcery in your graveyard, so you just made my next creature that much bigger. Thanks for that, I guess. I'm not really down anything except for a Displace or a Siren's Ruse or something of that nature. So it's really straightforward. He is a little expensive at 5 mana, so you're going to want to try to protect him. But once he's on the board, if you've got access to your flicker spells or your grave flicker spells, it's going to be super easy to keep those orc amass tokens coming once they die in combat, once you sacrifice them, once someone removes them or bounces them, that sort of thing. So pretty much my pillar one is just straightforward. Giant armies and smashing face. What do you think?
I love Flicker, engraved Flicker decks a lot. Like the only thing keeping me from building a lot more of them is that I just feel like I already have too many, and like I don't want it to get really stale.
Oh, sure,
Like,
yeah.
Like Rilsa also runs all the Flickers and all the Grave Flickers.
Every one of
like,
them.
Yeah, and like I might someday just take my Rilsa deck and like swap it out for Mouth of Sauron just to play a couple games, like flickering this guy
I don't see why
instead of
not.
Rilsa.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I if I didn't already have a bunch of these decks, I would build this one.
Yeah.
It seems really cool.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Dimir Flicker, so seems good to me. Who's up next?
I can get this out of the way real fast. Arwen wants you to scry. So just play cards that say scry on them. There are
Oh, look at that secret
hundreds.
tech. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I mean, the deck is blue, so you were already going to run Preordain and Serum Visions and Behold the Multiverse. Like, you were going to put those in the deck anyway.
Yeah.
So just do more of that.
Do more of that
Yeah.
thing. Like,
Like-
Augrial has been a card I've been putting in almost every blue deck for a long time now, so that's,
Yeah.
auto include right there.
Augrial is especially good because it has a body,
Yeah.
and we can put counters on it. Like, Augrial as a 1/1 that scries 3, pretty good. Augrial as a 6/6, like,
super good.
Also pretty good.
it's also pretty good. Yeah. Like, Arwen, yeah. Like, all the bodies that scry are really good.
Yeah.
Sigiled Scryfish lets you scry every turn. Like, that's fine. This is fine. Everything's fine.
It's all good, yes.
Yeah. That's all I got. Just do a Scryfall search for the word scry in the text box. Add basically all of it.
Yep.
You're doing great.
Seems good to me.
I-
That's a solid
I would like
pillar
to
one.
complain. There are cards in your deck that don't say scry.
There are a couple.
Hmm.
I'm
they-
going to talk about those in Pillar 2.
Ah.
Okay.
So they
I
do
don't
have a
suppose
home.
They do.
All right.
Yeah, and
We need one more signpost here. What do you got, Liam?
yeah, for mine, for Bilbo, he also really wants to flicker because he wants you to get to that 4th ring ability as fast as possible, and Bilbo does that both on ETB and LTB. So that'll be enters and leaves the battlefield. This is going to be really fast, and so you don't really need to go super hard on any other spell that says tempt. I personally like the Soothing of Smeagol because it makes the math on Bilbo really nice. Bilbo needs to enter and leave twice, and then ideally, with the rest of the deck that I'll talk about later, Bilbo is also your ring bearer. So you'll need to have Bilbo enter and leave once, enter and leave twice to get the full ring, and then enter a 3rd time to be the ring bearer. Whereas Soothing of Smeagol, you can use it as a removal spell, but if you used it as a way to bring Bilbo back to your hand, you would get your 1st and 2nd ring abilities on Bilbo's 1st entry and exit. You'd get your 3rd ring ability off of the Soothing of Smeagol, and you'd get your 4th ring ability when Bilbo enters the 2nd time, kind of removing the need to get him off the board and back on again.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of enjoy the Manolith with sets mechanics, partially because I just like Manoliths with set mechanics, and it fills kind of a similar role to that of the Soothing of Smeagol.
Mm-hmm.
I know Dave is partial to the Birthday Escape card because it replaces itself as well as gives you a tempting trigger. But other than those cards, I don't think there's a lot that you're really interested in terms of tempting beyond just flickering Bilbo. And then other than that, the deck outside of those 4 slots is kind of leaning into each of the ring's mechanics. Step 1 of the ring is unblockable, so you should be attacking with your ring bearer every turn, probably Bilbo, who makes treasures. Step 2 is draw and discard. This enables a few different things that we talked about in the pre-show. For instance, Dave likes Madness and Flashback here. I know a couple other people have just been using this as an outlet for digging for combos. Step 3 is the not quite Death Touch. This is probably the least interesting and least useful part of the ring. And then step 4 is making each opponent lose 3 life, which is a game-ending clock and the intended main win con, at least for my deck. I know there are people that as I previously mentioned, done combos and or are utilizing the discard a little bit more heavily. But for my deck in particular, the list that I brought today is kind of like, is it Spellslinger with no win con except what's printed on the commander?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're looking to use that fourth ability.
Except what's printed on the emblem that the commander kind of creates.
Right.
Right.
I just want to make that clear. So if anyone's looking at my deck list later and they're like, how does this deck win? That ring card that isn't on the deck list, that's how it wins.
Yeah, the ring itself. Yep. So yeah, the only thing better than having a commander printed with enters the battlefield is enters or leaves the battlefield.
Enters or leaves and makes an emblem your opponents can't touch. That's pretty good.
That is all good things piled up together.
This is one of the things that I think is really fascinating about the difference between the Bilbo Izzet or maybe Grixis draft archetype deck versus the Bilbo PDH deck. Is I think that in the draft deck you are snatching up every single tempt card you see.
Sure.
Because you only get Bilbo once, and like that's 2, sure, but you still need to be able to like reassign a ring bearer when yours dies, and you need to put in work to get to that 4th level. Like when Bilbo is in your command zone and you can just play him over and over again, like you don't need the other tempt stuff. Like you can dial that way back and just still count on always having your 4th tier of the ring and always having a good ring bearer. Like it's a weird like juxtaposition for me, which is why I love these episodes so much.
Yeah.
Like seeing what changes happen between the draft archetype and the PDH deck. It's fun to look at.
And Bilbo's only 3 mana, so it's not, even if you can't get your flickers online right away, it's not like it's gonna break the bank to have to cast them from the command zone, 2 or 3 times.
And like if someone kills him, like that death makes someone else your ring bearer and you still have the pressure on, and then you can cast him and his ETB makes himself the ring bearer again.
Right, exactly.
It's it doesn't stop.
There's so much going on, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Probably no one ever points a removal spell at him all game, because like what's the point?
Yeah,
like
he's gonna come back. Yeah.
That's the saddest, tempoist murder. Like all right.
Yeah.
I bought myself half a turn, I guess.
What's the other commander that does that? Mushka?
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. Marshcock gets kind of pricey though. Like if you kill it.
Yeah, it starts out kind of pricey, doesn't it?
It's 4.
Oh, okay.
4 and then 6.
Yeah.
So like, it can be. 3 and 5 sounds better.
Yeah, 3 and 5 does sound better. Even though it's only 1, it sounds worlds better.
Yeah. Are we ready for Pillar 2?
I think so. Am I starting this one off again?
All right. Let's just do a real quick recap.
Sure.
Pillar 2 is how we're going to leverage this advantage we make. So Pillar 1 is how Brad is going to get a lot of amass triggers over and over. Brad, please tell me, what are you going to do with your colossal orc army?
I think I've said it at least once, but I'm just going to try to smash face. Like,
I love
the Dimir Mouth.
Everything about this plan.
It's just going to leverage the big orc with, cards like Artful Dodge. Makes a giant or any creature, but in my case, it's going to make a giant creature unblockable. And it also has a very nice touch of flashback in case I need to, in case it gets milled with my commander, or I just want to cast it a second time on something. What I'm really looking forward to in this deck are Essence Harvest and Rites of Consumption. They're basically the black flings. So you get a 6/6, 12/12 orc out there, and you're going to close somebody out of the game in a hurry. And then just for, because I think it's funny, Wedding Invitation. I love that card. It replaces itself on ETB, and then you can just tap to make a creature unblockable. Like, that's hilarious to me. If it's a vampire, it gets lifelink, but I don't think I'm really running any vampires. I just care about the unblockableness and the card draw.
You're running a vampire.
Am I running a vampire?
Called Changeling Outcast.
Oh, shit.
It's
heck yeah. See?
Already unblockable.
See, that thing's going to get huge with the amass tokens, and then Wedding Invitation. Game over.
I love that Wedding Invitation making it unblockable does nothing. Like when you crack the invitation on that guy, it's just for lifelink.
Yeah. Literally just you absolutely if you absolutely need 4 points of life or something. Yep.
Yeah.
And then after some consultation with Dave, the Mirkwood Bats and the Trebuchet are in the deck for all the token creation and token sacrifice and tokens dying and tokens coming into play, because they're in there for, like Dave says, for the lols. For the lols of things.
All right,
Because they're so good.
We are at this point contractually obligated to reference Mirkwood Bats on at least 3 separate occasions during each episode.
Okay. Sounds good.
We can check that off now. That was number 3. All right, we're all set.
All right.
I mean, we get bonuses if we hit it a 4th time, but it has to come up naturally.
Yeah, organically. We can't just.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really it. And there's not a lot of leverage other than pressure. Like, I'm gonna make giant orcs and I'm going to pressure the table. Like, it's gonna come at you, so you need to throw a body in front of it or your face, one of the two, because it's coming at you. If you're lucky, I don't make it unblockable. If I don't have an unblockable spell in my hand or Wedding Invitation's not on the table. But basically, I'm just making gigantic creatures. And then hopefully I can draw into a Rite of Consumption or a Essence Harvest to get ready that way. That's my plan.
I love it.
Me too. It seems super fun.
Feels vaguely sort of Nadir-ish, and I love Nadir.
Yeah, it doesn't... It's not often that I get to build or get to play with Dimir decks that care about creatures, like, aggressively,
right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's almost always a combo or some sort of like a bunch of small creatures with curiosity effects on them, or whatever. But it's not very often that you get to play a Dimir deck with a cool commander, a very flavorful, awesome commander that can also fling a 10-10 to win the game.
Right. So, you love to see it.
Yeah, you love to see it, and I'm pretty stoked for it.
Speaking of 10-10s to win the game.
Yes. More of those, please.
Do you guys know that blue and green, which are the colors of Arwen and Domiel,
Okay.
are also some of the colors in which proliferate happens? Yeah. So
I am
step 1.
dumbfounded.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true.
Hard to believe, but Simic, somehow the most boring color, just does good things. But yeah, so my whole plan, my entire pillar 2 is we are going to scry a lot. Scrying a lot is going to put counters on a bunch of our creatures. Mm-hmm. Like, we're going to have these little elves that come into play in scry 1, and they're going to get a little counter on them right then. And then I'll cast a preordain and put a counter on something else. So that'll establish all the counters there. And then I'm going to cast a Bloom Hulk. And it's going to be a 4/4. And it's going to ETB, and it's going to say proliferate.
Uh-huh.
And with the proliferate on the stack, I'm going to find some stupid instant speed way to scry so that I can put a counter on the Bloom Hulk. And then the proliferate is going to happen, and the Bloom Hulk's going to be a 6/6, and my stupid little 3/2 elf that scries 1 on ETB is going to be a 6/5, and Arwen is going to be a 7/7. Like, these things just add up. Like, I once again have the most boring explanation in this pillar, and it's just like, you got some counters? Okay, get more.
Get more of them. Do more of whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And I like that you put in the show notes too, like, Arwen makes things huge, but just casually. And that's appropriate. Like, I can imagine, I can see in my head right now playing across the table from you, and you're on this deck, and it's like turn 6, and you got some creatures out, and it's like, no big deal, whatever. And then like 4 more turns later, and those creatures are killing everybody. And you're like, where did this come from? I have no idea.
They just incidentally become 10-10s.
Yeah. You're like, okay.
And you're like, okay, like, this is fine.
That's fine. Totally fine.
Like, these cards became 10-10s by me. Hold on, checks notes. Drawing good cards.
Yep.
I cannot imagine a more boring mechanic to lean into, but it's so strong.
It
just
is
does
really
what
strong.
You want. It's like more magic per magic. Like, it's just so brain dead but powerful. Like, it's wild to me.
More magic
per
magic. That's a good one.
Yeah. The bonus points for running a bunch of proliferate cards is that a handful of the scry things we got use counters to scry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's I forget the name of this guy, Aether Theorist,
Yeah.
Is a little body that you can tap and spend an energy to scry 1, and he comes in with 3 energy. And there's
But what
a
happens
card
when you're
that,
out of energy?
well, the trick is you don't run out of energy
Oh.
because you proliferate constantly.
I
Like,
see.
in addition to proliferating all of the +1/+1 counters, you can also proliferate your energy. There's another card that's exactly the same as the Aether guy, except it's a Phyrexian kid with oil. I guess it's 1 less mana and 1 less power, but it comes in with 3 oil counters, and you can remove 1 to scry 1.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's just you can proliferate the oil counters and the +1/+1s to just keep yourself in the scrying business and just keep all the counters. The spice must flow,
Sure.
and that's how we do it.
Now, since you're running, I think you got a creature or 2, but you're running a mana sink in the command zone. Are you trying to do any sort of like infinite mana shenanigans and make a million power creatures or anything like that?
No.
I guess that's the casually part of it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't. Yes, that's exactly. The casual part is that I don't have to put any thought or effort into Arwen making my guys huge. I'm just going to be like, oh, preordain. Okay, that's a card I should cast. And then I'm going to cast it and stuff's going to happen.
And
Like,
she's 2 mana. Like, that's crazy.
she's 2 mana, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's good.
someone's going to be like, oh no, that's a problem. She's already a 4/4 or 5/5. I'm going to kill her. And I'll be like, okay.
So
Go for it.
I stacked my deck with a couple lands, so I guess I'm casting her again. She's
Yeah.
cheap as hell. Like,
Yep.
you can temporarily delay this problem a little bit, but it's not going away.
like Scry is not even in an Arwen deck. Like Scry can be very powerful when it's like on command, if you will. Like,
Yeah.
one of the reasons I jam Augrial into every blue deck now is because Scrying 3 is enormous. So if you can pair Augrial with a draw spell or with another big Scry spell, you just feel like you're sculpting your entire deck, not just your hand.
Yeah, like that's what's Berserk to me, is that like you're getting all of this crazy massive like bonus from sculpting your draws.
Right.
Like, you get all of this and you never draw a bad card.
Yeah.
Like, what? It's so dumb.
Oh, that's fair.
Liam, change the subject for me.
Change it
and
for us.
tell me something more interesting.
So, in Pillar 2 for the Bilbo deck, he actually wants a couple of different things. The first one of which is Double Strike. If the main win con is that 4th ring ability, that ability is when the ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life. With Double Strike, if our ring bearer is unblockable, thanks to the first ability, where they can't be blocked by creatures with greater power, and we have a 1/3, we deal 1 damage to the opponent twice with Double Strike. That means we get twice the triggers. We're going to be hitting 1 opponent for 2 damage, and then every single opponent, including them, for 6 more. Double Strike is gonna help the game move along.
That's so clever. I love that line of action. That's so
Yes.
cool.
We also want haste, because the deck wants Bilbo to be online as fast as possible with the ring, but that also means we want him to be able to attack at the same turn he might come down off of Flicker effect. So haste is definitely important in the deck. Other than that, whatever you want to do with him is kind of open-ended. Some people pointed out Reckless Fireweaver and Ingenious Artillerist because of the treasures that Bilbo will be making. Other people have pointed out, what about Marut, the 7/8 mana artifact creature from Commander Legends Baldur's Gate, that, you cast it with a bunch of treasures, you get to make a bunch more treasures. That's kind of cute, sounds really fun, plays really well into the Fireweaver Artillerist gameplay. Other people have pointed out that because we're doing combo and we have a very high density of instants and sorceries just because, Firebrand Archer and Kessid Flamebreather are really good in this deck. And if you decide to lean more into that combo, you're deciding to lean into that second ability on the ring to draw cards and then discard them, the Firebrand and the Flamebreather are going to be really good. Not just, I'm playing an Izzet deck, they're pretty good. They're going to be, they're really good.
Yeah, and there's the new Flamesmith, too. Fits right in.
Yeah, and all these things, 1 damage is incidental, sure, but all these things do 2 or 3 damage each. That's half your opponent's life total. It adds up fast. I think this deck really is just looking to have as much incidental chip damage as possible.
Sure. I was looking at Bilbo, and 3 mana, 1/3. If you took the text leaves the battlefield off the card and you replace that with haste, do you think he would be as interesting or better? Or I don't think you can have enters or leaves the battlefield plus haste, but I think if it was just an ETB effect and he had haste, I think that would be, I don't know if it'd be busted or whatever, but I think it'd be pretty interesting.
I think that would be pretty busted on Bilbo alone, because let's assume turn 3 you're on curve. You drop Bilbo, ETB, he becomes first ring ability, he can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. So he's a 1/3 with haste that can't be blocked on turn 3. Because we're going to assume...
Oh, yeah, you just ramped yourself too, yeah. Okay.
And then you just ramp yourself an extra mana, because we're going to assume your opponents... They might have had a 1-drop, but let's assume they have a 2 or a 3-drop that has at least 2 power.
Mm-hmm.
That's not out of the realm of unreasonability. You ramp yourself, and then turn 4 comes around, you have 5 mana to drop something bigger. That seems pretty gross.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I also think, flavorfully, I don't think Bilbo has ever done anything swiftly in his entire life.
That's a really good point, yeah.
If you wanted to design a different card with a different name that is a 3 mana 1/3 that, tempts and has haste, that's probably still kind of busted, but you can't call it Bilbo anymore.
It's not a fast hobbit.
Nope.
All right, does that push us into Pillar 3?
I think it does.
Yeah. What is Pillar 3?
Pillar 3 is how to not die. I'll go ahead and start.
Pretty important.
It is in a game where it's you lose if you die. It is pretty important.
Oh, in the game.
Yeah, not in life.
We're
not that kind of podcast.
Also, don't die in life.
Yeah, try to avoid that if at all possible.
If you have a deadly shellfish allergy, don't eat shellfish.
Don't eat shellfish.
This is how you not die. It's one of many techniques.
Those are good techniques. They suck, but they're good techniques. All right, so how does the Mouth of Sauron not die? Well, he's not going to die because he's Dimir. Not only am I going to be harvesting essences and consumptioning rights for all that sweet life gain, but I'm also running, as blue decks do, I'm running a suite of potent counter spells, bounce spells, things like Callous Dismissal is in here, and it's super nice because not only does it bounce, it amasses a zombie, which now they're all sort of the same creature type, so it adds to my orc army as well as providing a little bit of tempo. I don't know how good this next card's going to be, but Traitor's Clutch. It's a 5 mana black instant that target creature gets +1/+0, becomes black, and gains shadow until the end of turn. I put it in this deck because it has flashback. I was kind of looking for, in the games or the turns where I have to mill myself to get the biggest orc on board or online, I was looking for some spells that had flashback. So I didn't even know this card existed until I did research for this deck. So it seems kind of funny. It seems fun. It's another way to make a big orc sort of unblockable-ish, and then I can flash it back to another creature or the next turn. I can cast it one time if it gets milled. But like I said, I don't know if it's going to be good. I've never played with it before. I never even knew it existed. So we'll see how that goes. I'm a big fan. I think it was mentioned earlier in the show, but I'm a big fan of Orcish Medicine. It's, target creature gains your choice of lifelink or indestructible. Honestly, if I need that one giant orc creature to stay alive, I might think about the indestructible, but I'm just the way I play games, I'm more interested in that lifelink aspect. Here you go. I need some life, and it amasses 1, so that's also nice. And then I'm not 100% sold on Deceive the Messenger, but it's a single blue for an instant. Target creature gets -3/-0 until the end of turn. I don't see it saving my life too often, but it does amass, so in the deck it goes, right? And then for good measure, obviously, I'm packing Gary along for the trip. I can't not play Gary in a deck that's half black. So there's that. And then to keep the path clean for my Orcish army, or to wipe out a board full of lethal creature tokens, which have become very popular lately, I have got in Crypt Rats and Pestilence, the board wipe duo, if you will. And that's really about it. I mean, Pillar 3 is just sort of an extension on Pillar 2. I mean, I'm just gonna make big orcs, keep them alive, try to make them bigger, and then just kill people, kill everybody. I mean, that's no big deal, right? I'm just killing people with big giant orcs.
Yeah, that seems true.
Not getting fancy whatsoever. What do you think, Dave?
I love it. Demir seems like a good place to just not die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Black likes to mess with dead things and likes to kill things, but it likes to stay alive.
Yep.
It has good ways to do that.
For sure.
Now there is I thought about it too, like there's large chunks of life gain in this deck, so I don't know if there's enough to warrant like a Epicure of Blood, a Marauding Blight Priest, but I've definitely considered them, mainly because, I've got, Essence Harvest, which I can cast, and then Archaeomancer back and I can cast it again, or Rite of Consumption, that sort of thing. I just don't know how reliable the life gain is going to be to waste a whole turn putting an Epicure of Blood on board. But I've thought about it. I have definitely thought about it.
Yeah, I like Epicure in decks where the life gain is like
constant.
Yeah, constant and like the plan, like plan
Yeah.
A. Like if it is a part of plan C, then like I don't want to do the 5-man investment, even though it's a 4/4.
Sure. Yep, that's totally fair. All right, who is Pillar 3 up next?
I got this one.
All right.
I
can see that
I've talked
lengthy and in depth.
Yeah, it's like 6 cards. The first one, the most important one, because this, so in Pillars 1 and 2, we have established that my deck does 2 things and only 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
It scries and
Yes.
it proliferates.
Yes.
And that is the end of the list. There is a card called Impede Momentum.
Yes.
Which has crazy beautiful art. It was one of the first appearances of stun counters, and I've been looking for a way to put it in a deck for a while. And it scries and has counters. So it's going in this deck. It is a 2-mana sorcery, tap target creature, put 3 stun counters on it, scry 1. So that is literally everything I want a control card to do for me. It'll take out a creature for at least 3 turns, possibly more if I proliferate, and it'll scry to trigger Arwen. It's just ideal.
Yeah, it's one of the handful of cards in your decks that cares about both half of what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Scrying and proliferating.
That is correct. So yeah, the rest of my entire removal suite is just cards that scry or cards that proliferate. I have the new Hithlean Knots, taps a creature, scry 1, draw a card, dissolve, counter target spell, scry 1, shower of arrows, destroy an artifact, enchantment, or flyer, scry 1. Psychic Impetus is the really funny one from the Impetus cycle. This is an aura that you can put on an opponent's creature for +2/+2, goaded, and every time it attacks, scry 2. So
thanks for making my creature bigger.
Right? I'd go attack that guy, and my creature gets bigger. It's perfect.
Awesome.
Smell Fear, Mesmerizing Dose. These are just standard issue removal spells that also proliferate. There's a couple more, but I mean, me saying their names is not going to give you more information about what they do than me telling you that they are very standard issue removal spells that proliferate. That's it. That's the whole thing.
I have your deck open on Moxfield, courtesy of your most gracious deck list link in the show notes. And I use the highlighter function to search for the word scry, and it comes up 47 times.
Yep, it sure does.
does.
Those are rookie numbers.
Well, the lands don't scry. Well, 2 of them do.
How many lands are you running?
35.
35. So what I'm hearing is there should be 65 cards that say scry.
Well, there are also 17 cards that proliferate.
Yeah.
And there are because I am a sap. There are 4 cards in the deck that do neither, and I've filed them under the heading aesthetic, just because they are beautiful cards from the Lord of the Rings set. Like Lorien Revealed doesn't scry or proliferate. It's just a blue sorcery that draws 3 cards in island cycles.
Yeah, it's a good card.
Galadriel Bow. I felt really awkward building a Middle-earth elf deck and not putting the Middle-earth elf bow into the deck.
Yeah,
doesn't scry, doesn't proliferate. It just seems necessary from a aesthetic perspective.
Sure.
So yeah, there are 4 cards in the deck that do not either scry or proliferate, and those are like when I built the deck and put it into sorted all the cards into the custom tags. Like that's it. I have 17 cards in the proliferate category, 41 cards in the scry category. I guess 43 when you include the scry trigger cards. And then 4 cards that I have labeled aesthetic.
That's what you call
And
all in.
Yeah, and like there honestly is no hyperbole in saying that I built this deck in approximately 4 minutes. Like,
No, it was like I told the story that you told us after the call was over, or after the show was over, that you built the deck, and I think that was absolutely correct. It's not like we sat on the line for another hour while you built the deck.
Right.
It was like we did the sign out and we said, okay, show's over. And you're like, I just built this deck.
I built this deck in 4 minutes while having a completely separate conversation about other things. Like absent-mindedly just happened to throw it together. Like it builds itself. It's like when I complain about this deck being brain dead, I am being extremely literal. Like it just does one thing.
It does it so well, though.
It does it really well, and I'm kind of mad about it. But yeah, that's my entire pillar too. There's just a handful of scry and proliferate cards that also are removal spells with incidental scry and incidental proliferate.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, what is
no life gain?
No life gain. Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
You don't always have to have life gain in Simic or green, I guess.
Yeah.
What does Bilbo like to do for pillar 3 there, Liam?
Bilbo is an Izzet Spellslinger deck that is constantly digging through the deck. So you should, in theory, have a full grip to just interact with whatever it is your opponents are doing. We've got some removal spells, such as Cast into the Fires, Smite the Deathless, and Fires of Orthanc. Cards that, honestly, there are probably slightly better versions of all of them already in Magic, but these are the Lord of the Rings themed ones, so these ones got priority.
Sure.
You've got board wipes, such as Fiery Cannonade and Breath Weapon, which are cards that everyone should be familiar with if you've been listening or playing PDH for a while. And then counterspells, like Arcane Denial and Counterspell. The way that this deck is doing Pillar 3 and not dying is just your typical Izzet Spellslinger method. You've got a full grip, cast something.
Yep. Because more than likely, whatever you cast is going to interact with something somewhere else.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, that seems straightforward. I like that. I'm trying to figure out how to say it, but like Bilbo has the thing he wants to do, and then you can also, you don't necessarily have to build the other 99 specifically around what Bilbo is trying to do. You absolutely could. You can absolutely lean all into it with all the double strikes and all the combat tricks and all the interaction you want. But it's just wide open enough that you could build your 9 as a tempo deck, as a mid-range deck, or whatever you feel like.
The Bilbo build is actually really nice. It's kind of like Commander of old, where you picked your commander, you slotted in the 7 to 10 cards that worked really well, and the other 80 cards were lands and things that work with your strategy. Before Commander started kind of getting hyper-specific about what they wanted, or they printed Commander cards for 10 years and now there's just stuff you run.
Mm-hmm.
This Bilbo deck is very much like that old style, where it's like, you put in the 10 to 15 cards that need to be in the deck, and then you've got 60 slots to just do whatever the hell you want to do.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
I also like that aspect.
Yeah.
The pre-show involves this in more depth, but like Liam and I were arguing about which direction you can take Bilbo is, and like
neither of us were
I
wrong.
still think
right.
That's we're both we're both very, very like invested in our plans, but like there's no wrong answer here. He just like he enables good things.
Mm-hmm.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I think that's super cool about him.
Yeah, and like my commander's powerful, Dave's commander's powerful, but the rest of the deck really has to care about the text written on our commanders, whereas Liam's doesn't necessarily.
Exactly.
And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Big fan. Ooh, does that wrap up Pillar 3?
I think it does.
Yeah.
Ooh. Let's scroll down here a little bit.
Last one, Brad. What is Pillar 4?
Pillar 4 is it's a classic. It is how to not run out of gas. Thankfully, I am in Dimir, so that's going to be, if I'm running out of gas, it's probably something I did incorrect. But I looked through my deck list. I have 18 cards that draw at least one card, and many of them draw more than that if you factor in some flashback. Like I have Deep Analysis in there. First Sphere Gargantua effectively draws you 2 cards if you can cast it and then unearth it. And then on top of that, I'll be able to Archaeomancer back most of these draw spells whenever I need them, because, like I mentioned before, I'm running a full package of flickers. I think double-digit flickers. So if and when I need to draw another card, I can just get it back with Archaeomancer. I cannot wait to get my hands on a nasty end in paper. The stonks on this is huge, and the dream is to kind of hit Mr. Mouth with like a return to action and then sacrifice him to nasty end and just draw a bunch of cards and make a giant orc. And that just seems like really fun. It's not like a super way to progress the game plan towards me winning, but it is a very powerful turn to draw 3 cards and make a 8/8, orc for free, basically. I don't often play with Flood of Recollection, but this seems like a really good home for it. I know, Dave, that's one of your... You play that card quite a bit. Do you feel like that card belongs in this deck?
I wouldn't say I play it quite a bit. I played it. I played it very impactfully in our last stream because
that's
Gandalf
true.
is Berserk, and Gandalf lets you play Flood of Recollection with Flash, which means it's just Snapcaster, which is gross. But no, it's only in a couple of my decks. I'm
Okay.
not sure it should be in this one. You could make a case for it because
It does exile, so it's not like I'd be able to get it back or anything like that.
Right. I think that your general plan, because the Mouth of Sauron mills 3, and then it amasses equal to the number of instant and sorceries in that player's graveyard. So
Correct.
if we're assuming that you're targeting yourself, you want to have a high instant sorcery count so that you hit those big amass numbers, and you want to be able to use your own graveyard as a resource while you're doing it. So
Right.
there are pretty compelling arguments that it should be in your deck, but I mean, there's also equally compelling arguments not to have it there. I think it's fine either way.
Yeah, that's fair. And then because, I'm in blue, I run really good draw spells. Because I'm in black, I'm going to run Siphon Mind. I mean, that's just, in a deck like this, I think you sort of have to, because that fills your opponent's graveyards, hopefully with an instant or sorcery, and it refills your hand quite a bit as well. I mean, it's like a 6-card advantage, right? Like you're up 6 cards. I mean, how's that go wrong, right? Isn't that the math?
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. And I'm pretty light on creatures. I think in total, even counting the commanders, I'm less than 20. I'm right at 19 creatures. Of course, that's not counting the orcs I'm going to repeatedly make throughout the game. So I went ahead and added Blood Fountain and Unseal the Necropolis because they both get 2 creatures back for recursion, and because my guys will be dying, or they'll just be accidentally milled into the graveyard. So I wanted a way to get those back, and I think that's really it as far as not running out of gas. Obviously, we're in blue, so it doesn't take a ton of digging deep and going through, decades of Magic history to find good card draw spells. Like, they're in pretty much every set. It was just a matter of trying to find one that had good flashback, like deep analysis, and then more or less hand picking the black card advantage spells that worked best with my deck from what it seems like on paper anyway. So that's the reason for Blood Fountain, for Unseal the Necropolis, and then all the other ones are pretty straightforward. I don't think we have to get too cutesy with it. Like I said, we're not running a combo deck or anything like that. So just try to draw a few more cards than your opponents and make big creatures. That's my entire plan.
I like it.
Yep. I'm a fan of plans like that. I see in the show notes that Dave has an extra sentence written in this pillar.
Yeah, there's 2 entire sentences for Arwen. I will continue to elucidate all of the most brain-dead strategies in Magic's history while explaining to you how the Arwen Scrying Matters deck is going to not run out of gas with a deck full of Preordains and Serum Visions and Behold the Multiverse. You're already running these cards.
Pillar 4 is just look at the deck list. That's
right.
That's the deck.
So there's no thought required here. You just you were gonna put Behold the Multiverse in your blue deck anyway.
Right, exactly.
It's just that it's better in my deck than it is in your deck, and that's nutty. That is lunacy. Yeah, like unexplained visions, Arwen's gift. There's so many blue things will scry and then let you draw Omen of the Sea. You were gonna play Omen of the Sea anyway.
Yep.
It's just better for me.
What'd you say during the pre-show? Like, you also have that card in your deck, but mine's better or something like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
That pretty much explains it.
Yeah. So what's absolutely berserk about this is I've focused this entire thing on Arwen's first ability because again, like she has a second ability, you can pay 6 mana and scry 2 that is exploitative and it's extortionate and like the rate is like I think they just made it up. I think they rolled a dice. Like, how much
Yeah,
should this
I think
cost?
so.
Someone with a dice in their hand was like, "Let me find out." Just like looks like 6 today, boss. Like, all right, so like
Print it, let's go.
and yet, in the unlikely event that someone casts Delirium Skeins and brings it back to their hand and then casts Delirium Skeins a second time back to back,
Right.
if you somehow find yourself with an empty hand, Arwen does in fact have a second ability that lets you scry 2 for 6 mana to make sure that you're not going to, like, you will recover from the double Delirium Skeins faster than anyone else. You always have something to do with your mana, even if it's moderately terrible.
Yeah, and if PDH has taught us nothing else, it's that mana sinks in the command zone are really good.
Yeah, like I don't want to argue that this one is good, but I'm not going to argue against you saying it's good.
Right.
Like I think that you're right. I just like am irritated enough about that situation that I'm not going to be the one to voice it. So thank you for that. I'm glad that found its way into the episode without me speaking the words out loud,
Yep.
and I yield the remainder of my time.
Sounds like Bilbo has the floor.
All right. How do we not run out of gas? Same process as how do we not die? We are an Izzet Spellslinger theme that is constantly digging through the deck. You should have a full grip of cards to continue to dig for more cards. We have card draw, we have card selection, we have islands. You're looking at Deep Analysis, Faithless Looting, Lorien Revealed, Preordained, Reckless Impulse, Secrets of the Golden City, Thoughtcast, because we have an undescribable amount of treasures on board. Ren's Resolve, Consider, Opt, and Thrill of Possibility, all just some quick examples of cards you should be running. But
Oh, this is crazy. Did you know what Opt does?
yeah, I do know what Opt does.
What?
It scries one, then draws a card.
Oh, that's nuts. It scries?
So
What a good card.
so Opt is better in Dave's deck than Bilbo?
Yeah.
Huh.
Like we'll both run Opt,
Weird.
and Opt is just like you run it in your deck because it's amazing, and I'm gonna run it in my deck because it's better than in yours. It's just better than amazing.
And it's so true.
It's like, it's just gonna reward me for playing the game normal. Like, okay,
Oh, that's fantastic.
I'm so mad about Arwen, but I kind of want to build her anyway. It's very frustrating.
I feel that way about certain decks, and I just don't end up building them because I don't have any interest in playing them. But I don't know. Maybe it's because Scry Matters is something that's kind of brand new to Pauper Commander that makes me want to build it and just sort of have the deck to play it. Because a lot of times, like I build these decks that's that sculpt your hand and draw a bunch of cards, and there's a lot of interaction or working on the stack or instance and this sort of thing, and they're sort of exhausting mentally, but like Arwen doesn't seem that way.
There's no mental. I mean, you do have to make a decision every time you scry. You have to decide,
Yes,
do I
that
want
is
to draw
true.
that or not? But like, in terms of deck construction, this is one of the most brain dead things I've ever put together.
And it's so funny because it's like, you say brain dead, and I mean, it kind of is, but at the same time, it's doing some of what a lot of players consider big brain stuff. Like you're sculpting your hand, you're sculpting your top deck, you're manipulating your deck, you're manipulating cards, you're making creatures bigger at the same time. Like there's a lot of moving parts here, but it's all very straightforward. If that,
Yeah.
There's not a lot going on here, which is fine, which is great. It's going to lead to a lot of happy players. It's going to be a decent deck at least. It's not going to be top tier or anything, but we don't need another Simic top tier deck.
I am really okay not having more top tier Simic decks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Watch you say that, and someone is going to break this Galadriel or something. It's gonna be like the next Gretchen.
Yeah, or in the next couple sets, they'll print a when you scry, do X, and that's going to end up.
When you
breaking
scry, draw
it.
5 cards.
Right.
Well, no, someone's gonna make a creature that says whenever you put a +1/+1 counter on it, scry 1.
Oh.
That's it. That's the deck.
Oh,
How does that not exist already? That completely seems like something they would have made by now.
Right?
Wow. You should work for Wizards. Morrow, I know you're listening. Hire this man.
I know you're a fan.
I know you're a fan.
You have my number. Give me a call.
Yep. Cool. I think that wraps up our signpost uncommon deck building shenanigans. What do you think?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add about your ultra in-depth deck?
I'm okay being done talking about this deck.
Yeah, I am too. Like when I built Mr. Mouth, I like sat down and I built it and I picked out cards. Like I even put it in our private chat for this episode. I'm like, oh, I've got too many cards. I'm like 15 over, blah, 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 blah. Help me out. Like I could not figure out how to whittle it down because I put so much thought into it. And then I get the deck list here in the show notes and we start breaking it down and I'm like, all I want to do is make big creatures and kill people. It shouldn't have been as hard as I was trying to make it out to be.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair. Look at us though. Liam, what do you think? Final thoughts on your Bilbo list? Is this something you're going to build in paper? Do you want to try it out, or you can wait for somebody else to do it?
I don't know. When it came to picking commanders for this episode, it very literally this set is. I'm having a lot of fun with it in limited, which the last time I had a lot of fun with a set in limited was Strixhaven. So with that comes, I don't really want to build anything out of it. I just kind of want to enjoy the limited environment. I might end up building the Bilbo list only because I chose Bilbo because it was my pre-release card. It was my pre-release promo.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You know, Dave and Brad, I think it was yesterday, they were like, Liam, you need to pick a deck. And I was like, the pre-release promo I'm looking at right now. That'll be it. And yeah, I just...
Excruciating process.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And so I don't know that I'm going to build it yet, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, that's totally fair.
I have no idea. I might.
Yeah, I'm gonna. It's kind of the same thing with Sauron here. Like, I'll probably end up with it in paper at some point, but I know I don't have all these amass spells like in paper, in hand right now, and I don't really want to buy them specifically to build this deck. But once I get them all together, eventually I'll have this deck together.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rush out and buy it, but it seems fun enough that I'd like to play it a couple times. Or if I end up on someone else's stream where I'm not trying to operate, OBS and everything else, I may like just throw the Moxfield deck on, to OBS to the virtual cam and play it that way, see how it plays out.
Yeah, sure.
But it seems fun. Yeah, so that wraps up the deck talk. I think we actually have a few minutes for a listener question this week. I feel like it's been a while. What do we got, Liam?
Yeah, so the listener question this week comes from Twitter, from the user Trilorem. What is your favorite piece of removal?
This is a good
Brad,
question.
Dave, take that one.
Sure. Fiery Temper.
Fiery Temper, all right.
Oh, that's spicy. I would not have thought about that.
Cannot get over.
I was about to say that's the Madness Bolt, right?
That's the Madness Bolt.
It's Madness Bolt. Yep.
I love how they just took Lightning Bolt and they're like, what if we made Lightning Bolt better? What if you could cast it while it's being discarded?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, all right. Better than Lightning Bolt.
Cool.
I'll put better than Lightning Bolt in my deck. That's fine.
What card is that? Better than Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, that is how I think of it. Like Lightning Bolt, but better.
Yeah, I never would have considered that. Like when we put the question in the show notes, like red almost didn't even pop into my head because I typically use red so much to go upstairs, to go to the dome, to go to the face. Like I rarely use it for removal, so it didn't even occur to me.
Temper barely hedges out Dark Withering because it can go to. Like Dark Withering is my second favorite.
That's a good
removal spell.
Yep.
Which is Doomblade, but better.
But better.
Because it madnesses and it's cheaper than Doomblade.
And it is cheaper
somehow.
Yep.
And but yeah, Fiery Temper goes to face sometimes, so I like it better.
Nice.
I have a couple. There's a couple other ones I like. In very specific circumstances, I really like. There's a card called Faraday's Fireball, which is a 5-mana instant from AFR. It deals 5 damage to a creature, and then you roll a d20, and depending on the d20 result, it either deals 2 damage to each player or 2 damage to each opponent. And the reason that I like this is because it is my favorite card in Zada. I just like
Really?
the idea of, right, like if I have like, 8 creatures or whatever, I will kill Zada with Faraday's Fireball, and I'll deal 16 damage to each opponent. And probably like 10 to me as well.
It targets the creature, so it targets all your creatures.
I will murder my entire board in just this catastrophic pillar of flame.
But isn't that goblins though? I mean, that's perfectly goblins.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the quintessential goblin experience.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And like, if I'm at, 8 life, like I might die to this too. Who knows?
Sure. We're gonna figure it out. Whatever happens.
Completely random whether or not I die, but like you are also dying, and I dig that. I'm into it. Outside of Zada decks, I don't like Faraday's Fireball, but like in the Zada deck specifically, what a spectacular card.
That is really good. Yep. Coming out with some spice for this answer. I don't really have too much spice. I'm pretty blasé when it comes to my removal. Like, sort of like when I mentioned earlier about playing draw spells in a blue deck. I'm sort of that way with black. Like, I'm playing swamps. I guess I probably have Scythe in mind, but then I also have Cast Down and Go for the Throat. Like, those are my removals. I'm not going to try to get too fancy with it. White's removals are okay. They're just not. They're never like super interesting. They always like, they're very conditional. So you never know what you're going to end up getting with them. I like generally the catch-all removals that'll save my butt in a pinch. Like even when I try to play a control deck, I don't load it with removal spells. I'd rather have more stack interaction or like bounce spells, that sort of thing, rather than just hardcore removal spells. So when it comes to that sort of thing, I'm really just, a go for the throat kind of guy. Like I just want to kill your creature and move on. Let's not make a fuss about it. Let's just understand that this is happening and you can't stop it, and let's just move on to the next person.
How do you feel about Feed the Swarm?
I like it. I do. I enjoy it quite a bit. Because when I build decks, when I put it in decks, it's always like, I need whatever. Candlekeep Sage, I need to blow that up. Or Oubliette Protection, I need to blow that up. I almost always forget that Feed the Swarm actually hits creatures too.
Oh, yeah.
Until I reread it, because it's always there like for a specific reason in my deck. But Feed the Swarm's great. I love it. I've been hurt before by like, oh crap, here comes a Crusher. I can't kill that or I'll die from Feed the Swarm, but that's pretty rare. But no, I enjoy it quite a bit. And we got a reprint of that in the Commander Lord of the Rings too, so that's pretty cool.
For sure.
Liam, how do you like to blow stuff up or murder things or what have you, exile things? What do you got?
I don't really blow things up or exile them. I prefer to phase them out.
Oh,
with an oubliette.
Oh.
All right. Well, okay.
And on that note, if it's not oubliette, it's going to have to be the cycle. I don't want to call it a cycle. I'm going to call it a cycle. The cycle of green removal spells that I've kind of been like personally championing for like the last 5 years. The 3-mana instants of sorceries that deal with artifacts, enchantments, or things that fly, which means that the latest 2 iterations of that would be Atraxas Fall, the 2-mana sorcery version that also happens to hit battles, or the Lord of the Rings Shower of Arrows, 2 and a green, that destroys an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying at instant speed, and then scries 1. Just those are the 2 newest versions of that effect. They're the 2 best versions of that effect. And if I'm not phasing things out with an oubliette, it's got to be that.
Now that we've sort of been talking about it, do you consider edict effects to be removal?
I would consider edict effects to be removal, yes.
Because I for real prefer edicts over just targeted removal. Like, I'd rather drop a Chain Devil or a Flesh Bag or a Slum Reaper and just see what the table does. Like, I know that sometimes they're just not going to be good because they'll be like, fine, here, I'll kill my 1/1 soldier or what have you, but I like hitting as many people as I can at once, but I know that they're very limited as far as being impactful, if that makes sense. But if those are removal, then I definitely enjoy edicts quite a bit. I was a big fan, in 60-card formats, I was a big fan of Diabolic Edict, Chainer's Edict, that sort of thing, and now I've just sort of graduated that into multiplayer with your Chain Devils and what have you. So, huge fan.
Yeah.
But that's all I got on removal. Dave, you got anything else? You ready to wrap it up for the week?
I'm ready.
You ready to go pack and head for Detroit?
I am super ready to pack and head for Detroit.
I am too.
I'm gonna be in Detroit by the time this episode goes live, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, I will be about halfway through my road trip there, so it'll be amazing. Next time you hear from any of us, we'll be in person in another state.
Yeah.
It's gonna be awesome. I do have to work tomorrow, but like I was thinking about that today. Like I'm gonna sit at work, and I'm not really gonna be working. All I'm gonna think about is leaving in 12 hours or 18 hours or whatever. Like,
just gonna stare at the clock.
Yeah, I'll just be on the clock doing nothing, thinking about my vacation. But anyway, that'll be a good time. You got anything else, Liam?
No, I'm good.
All right, cool. Well, as usual, a few more things before we wrap it up for the week. If you need more Pauper Commander talk or you have any questions about the format, you can always email the show at thepdhpod@gmail.com. You can head on over to the PDH Homebase's website. You'll find their Discord server right there. Or you can find the show on Twitter at the PDH Pod. You can also find Liam and I on Twitter at Pauper Command and Pauper_B, respectively. And as always, you can find Dave as Alcadron or not Alcadron, anywhere PDH is being talked about. And I'll put all the links, the deck list that we talked about today, all that good stuff down into the details of the show. But I think that pretty much wraps up episode 54 of the PDH Pod. But first, we want to give a big thanks to MTG Brad for letting us use their sweet tunes for the show. And from everyone in here to everyone out there, brew a deck, play some PDH, and I'll see you guys in person in a couple days, I guess. Peace.
Cheers.
See you. Bless me.
Whoa.
So,
Hello.
Welcome to the pre-show. It's minutes of us silently typing punctuated by bodily fluids.
I brought Pauper text to the party. Pauper. I brought Pauper text to the party.